I divorced my husband after he gambled away our life savings and helped out his cheating sister. Now they're flat broke and he's facing legal issues for messing with a minor. This story's gonna take a while, so stick with me. I'm 37, and I married my now ex-husband Liam, who's 42, 10 years ago. Our marriage was pretty happy, even if I had some beef with his family. But it was nothing I couldn't handle, so we were good. His family was super tight-knit. He's got an older sister, Emily, who's 46 now, and she's married to my ex-Bill, now 48. Emily and Bill have 2 kids, and Emily stays home with them. The kids were Liam's world, and he spoiled them rotten. They were great kids, and I adored them too. Between Liam and me, I was the cool aunt, so everything was chill. About 5 years back, Liam and I hit a rough patch financially. I had to take a break from my job to work on my mental health. My old job was a toxic nightmare, with 0 boundaries and crazy hours. I was expected to be available 24/7, and my bosses were totally unsupportive. I was in a really dark place mentally, so I decided to step back from work. I talked it all over with Liam, and he was the one who encouraged me to do it and stood by me through it all. We always kept our personal expenses separate. We had a joint account for stuff like groceries, home expenses, and date nights. Basically everything we did together. The contributions to the joint account were based on our incomes. Since Liam made more than me, he put in more money, even though we were contributing the same percentage of our income to the joint account. I took a good look at my finances before deciding to take this break, and I never even hinted to Liam that he should cover my share or anything like that. In fact, he was the one who brought up the idea, and I shut it down right away. I didn't want to mess with the arrangement we had, and I knew my savings would cover my part until I was ready to go back to work. Liam had a solid job at a big company, so there was no reason for us to end up in the financial mess we did. 3 months after I stopped working, Liam started acting strange. He'd snap at me if I suggested getting takeout or if I bought something new. Sure, some of the money I spent was from our joint account, but never for my personal stuff. If I didn't feel like cooking and suggested we eat out, he'd come up with weak excuses or just be outright rude. After a few tries, I gave up. But even when I used my own savings, which he had no control over, he'd still act weird. This was totally unlike him because in all the years we were married, he never tried to control how I spent my money. So I confronted him and asked what was going on. At first, he tried to brush it off, but then he admitted that he had gambled away almost all of our savings and we were nearly broke. He was the one who managed our finances, and I trusted him with my money too. I never checked my account because I trusted him, and this had never happened before. That's why I thought he was joking at first, but when I saw how serious he was, I was completely shocked. I wanted to leave him right then and there because he had gambled away my life savings, and this break was supposed to be for me. Now suddenly I had this huge problem hanging over my head of getting our affairs back in order. When I looked at our finances, it was way worse than what he had made it out to be. We were literally bankrupt, and our house was about to get taken away. I frantically started applying to places and got him into therapy. Luckily enough, I got a job offer in the next 3 days, and the perks were amazing, so I knew I could slowly get us out of this mess and rebuild our wealth. I was still mad at him for betraying my trust like that, but there was so much going on and so much to do that I didn't even have the time to yell at him. During this time, I repeatedly kept asking him to talk to Jonathan for help. He's filthy rich, but Liam kept saying no. I didn't know what his stupid deal was, but I knew that I was not going to screw myself over because he couldn't ask his own brother-in-law for help. I ended up calling Jonathan and explaining the situation to him, and he helped us out right away. Instead of being grateful, Liam started a fight with me, saying that I emasculated him as the man of the family in front of his own brother-in-law. Even at such a crucial point in our lives where we were practically having to start from scratch, he only cared about his stupid ego and the facade he had created in front of the world. This was my tipping point. I was furious with him. He had single-handedly destroyed not just the fruits of his efforts, but also mine, and had completely derailed the plans that we had made for ourselves as a family. I told him that he had emasculated himself by showing no responsibility towards our family and our future, especially since we had decided that we would be trying for a baby. I told him that he made one stupid decision after another and blew away everything that we had worked so hard for. And I also drew a line, saying that I would not be having a baby if he did not get his act together. He got madder at me for being a controlling wife, rather than being grateful that I had gotten us out of this mess, of course not without the help of Jonathan. Over the next year and a half, we worked hard to make money and paid back every cent to Jonathan. I'll always be thankful to him for sticking by us and helping us out of a mess that he had nothing to do with. Liam, though, was still salty about me taking Jonathan's help because he didn't want the whole family to know the hole we were in. Thankfully, Jonathan hadn't said a word to anyone, not even Emily. Things had been tense between me and Liam since then, but I knew I wanted things to improve between us, if not now then, eventually. However, something else happened that made me lose all respect for him as an individual. Once we were back on our feet, things got a little better, but during family get-togethers, I could sense some tension between Emily and John. I know it wasn't my business, but I was concerned and worried, especially about Jonathan. I brought it up with Liam and asked if I was the only one who noticed it or if he felt the difference too. He told me I was overthinking and that nothing was wrong. But 2 days later, I went to Emily's place to drop off some tarts for the kids. They loved my tarts, and she was acting really weird. She seemed to be in a rush and wanted me to leave ASAP. I knew something was up, so while I left the house, I stayed in my car to see what she was doing. Call me creepy or whatever, but my gut told me something was going on, and it needed my attention. Lo and behold, I see a guy coming out of the house, and Emily seeing him off. I wouldn't have immediately suspected her of anything if she hadn't acted so guilty. The guy had a cap on and was slouching. It was clear he didn't want anyone to see who he was. I could tell from their body language right away that she was cheating on Jonathan. I was totally grossed out by how bold and ungrateful she was. A part of me wanted to call her out right then and there, but I chickened out, scared of how she'd react, and honestly I wasn't even sure if that was the right move. So I headed straight home and spilled everything to Liam. I figured he'd be shocked, pissed, disgusted, or maybe even in denial, but what he said next blew my mind. Liam did the complete opposite of what I expected. He was quiet for a moment, then asked if I'd told anyone else. I said no, and he let out this huge sigh of relief. He told me to keep it on the down low and never tell a soul what I'd seen. I was beyond shocked. I told him he was nuts if he thought I'd stay silent and let Jonathan stay stuck in a marriage with a cheating wife. He argued that we didn't know for sure if they were cheating, and for all we knew, they might have an open marriage. I shot back that both he and I knew Jonathan well enough to know he'd never go for that kind of deal. But I said even if he had, we needed to make sure she wasn't cheating on him, which meant we had to talk to him. I was dead set on talking to John first, and only then to Emily, because I knew that even if Emily was up to no good, she'd come up with some quick excuse to cover her tracks. Liam kept pushing back, throwing out all sorts of reasons why we shouldn't tell John. He said I had no business getting involved in someone else's drama, then he said it wasn't my place, and that we had no clue what was going on in their relationship. To be honest, I found myself wavering a couple of times and thought about talking to Emily first. My rational mind knew that what was happening was wrong, and that I needed to step in to save the man who had saved my family. But the emotional side of me, the side that Liam was totally messing with, was leaning towards buying all his ridiculous excuses and justifications for why his dear sister was doing what she did. This internal battle went on for a long time until I finally decided that I couldn't deal with this anymore and that I had to do the right thing, even if it came at a cost. But before I told Jonathan, I wanted to let Liam know that I would be spilling the beans. To say that he went batshit crazy is an understatement. We had the biggest fight of our lives that day, and he just wouldn't listen to me. This fight was even worse than the ones we had during his whole gambling episode. He kept saying that I had no right to interfere in his sister's life and ruin it. I told him that his stance on cheating and his fierce defense of his sister were alarming and were making me wonder what his reaction would be if I cheated. He said that he wouldn't have wanted someone else to come and tell him about his own wife, but I wasn't buying it. I had a nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, the fact that he was defending Emily's infidelity so much was maybe him trying to rationalize his own cheating. I had a suspicion, solely based on his reaction, that he was cheating. I had no proof, no reason other than this to even have a tiny bit of doubt, but that seed was planted. I drove over to Jonathan's house, and I wanted to have a confrontation with Emily present, but unfortunately she wasn't there. I told everything to him, and he broke down crying in front of me. He said that he had been having doubts regarding her infidelity, but he had no proof and nothing to say because he couldn't just accuse her based on his instinct. I told him that I had nothing substantial either. I had just seen her all worked up, and right after that, a few minutes later, a guy left the house. I told him that it could have been a worker, a friend, or anyone else, but my gut was telling me something totally different. He thanked me for letting him know, and that was it. For the next few weeks, we heard nothing about what was going on. Liam and I were in a kind of cold war, but I don't think he told Emily that I had found out about the affair or that I had told Jonathan. However, Jonathan dropped the bomb one day and said that Emily and he were getting a divorce. This totally blindsided my ex-mother-in-law and ex-father-in-law because nobody saw it coming. They had always been the couple that seemed so in love and lived this perfect life, at least from the outside. That's why it shocked everyone except for me, of course. Emily looked miserable and like she had been crying. Jonathan stayed a true gentleman and never told anyone why he decided to leave her, just that there was no way to save the relationship anymore. A few days after this, Emily came to my house and was screaming at me as loud as she could. I knew then that Liam had told her that I was the one who spilled the beans to John. She cursed me out and said things that I can't even repeat to anyone, not even in private. I kept my cool the whole time and told her that she had brought this on herself and that blaming me wasn't going to change anything. She was the one who chose to cheat, so she had to face the consequences of her actions. Liam and I had stopped talking completely by then. Living in the same house with him was a mental strain that I had to deal with every single day. Gradually, Emily and Liam started turning other family members against me. Emily kept her kids away from me. Liam told his mom that I was the one who fed John lies about poor Emily, which is why they were splitting up. I became the villain overnight, and everyone was so caught up in hatting on me that they missed who the real problem was. One day, I'd had enough and I lost it. Liam and I had been struggling ever since his gambling habit came out, and with all this drama going on, I knew I wanted a divorce and that nothing he could do would make me respect him again. I couldn't see myself living with a gambler and someone who could defend cheating. He was acting like a guilty man, and to be honest, I had this nagging fear that he was cheating on me too. But by then, I was already done with the marriage, so even if he was having an affair, it wouldn't have really bothered me. This just made me even more sure about getting a divorce. I got the whole family together and laid out the real reason why Emily and Jonathan were getting a divorce. I told them I'd seen her with some stranger, and I'd shared it with Liam, who was ready to defend his sister no matter what. Nothing I said was getting through to him, and when I told Jonathan about the affair, the brother-sister team started bad-mouthing me in public. I also let them know they'd treated me like crap through all of this and that I was done putting up with it. To my surprise, even my ex-Mill and ex-Phil started sticking up for their kids. That's when I knew for sure that this family was totally nuts, and I was absolutely right to walk away from this toxic mess for my mental health. When I announced publicly that I was also going for a divorce, you could hear a pin drop in the house. Liam looked like he'd been hit over the head with a lamp. His eyes were as big as balls, and I can't even tell you how satisfying it was to see him like that. I also told him that since he had such a close-knit family, he needed to move out of my house within 2 weeks because I was totally serious about going through with this. His tone did a complete 180, and he kept apologizing and saying that we could work through this. Honestly, we could have, but I just didn't want to. He tried to turn things around. He tried to set up date nights and book spa appointments, as if my problem was just not getting enough attention. He totally didn't get how serious the situation was. I had to sit him down and tell him that I was leaving him because I didn't like who he was as a man. It wasn't something he could change in me, and my decision to leave him was final. He had a hard time accepting it, but eventually he had to. He moved out of the house eventually, and our divorce was finalized pretty soon, around the same time that Jonathan and Emily got divorced. Within a few months, I sold my house and moved states for a better job opportunity. I made the move to my current state and job 3 years ago. I haven't been in touch with anyone from the family since then. Jonathan and I do talk to each other once in a while, but nothing more. 2 days ago, I got a text from a random number. It was Liam. He was crying his eyes out on the phone, saying that he made the biggest mistake of his life by letting me go and that he should have fought harder to keep me and trusted my instincts every step of the way. I wasn't really in the mood for his regret, so I asked him what was up. Apparently, he recently got married to Emily's friend, and he was happy, but since last week, both Emily and his new wife have been missing. At first, he thought something had happened to them, and he went to the police. But the police got back in touch with them, saying that both of them were safe, and had asked him to not try and contact them. So his new wife and sister totally cleaned out his bank account and took off together. I'm hopping for his sake that it's just a vacation and they'll come back because he's totally screwed if it's something else. He was crying on the phone like a little kid, and honestly, I wanted to laugh at him instead of comforting him. Call me mean, but that's just how it is. He brought this on himself, and now he can lie in the bed he made. I told him I was sorry about what was happening, but I couldn't really get why he was dragging me into his personal drama. He went quiet for a bit, and I knew I'd hit the mark with what I said. He said he wanted my help to find out where they were, and he also needed my advice on how to fix his finances since I was the one who helped him out last time. I told him to go jump in a lake and that I wasn't going to help him. I told him I was done with him, and whatever he was dealing with was his problem, and his alone, and then I hung up. I hate to say it, but I'm kind of happy he's finally facing the consequences for messing up my life. I'm glad I divorced him, and I definitely don't want him back, but he made me work my butt off to rebuild our wealth and then showed me his true colors and where he stood on cheating. That's what hurt me the most. If I had known he'd turn out like this, I would have left the marriage the moment he told me about the gambling. But I stayed, I worked my tail off, and I did it all for him. And it all amounted to nothing. That's what really gets under my skin, and I'm glad his actions and habits are finally catching up to him, and with Emily of all people betraying him. Update 1, I did some snooping because this is juicy gossip, and why not? I found out that Emily and Liam's wife, who's only 21 by the way, have booked a trip to Europe and are spending like crazy. They're posting on social media all the time, which kinda makes me suspicious because it's public info and anyone can see it. They've been throwing up posts on Instagram and stuff, but I think they might have blocked the whole family, so no one knows what's going on with them. I'm not sure if I should tell Liam what I've found or not. Part of me thinks I should just spill the beans and at least give him some info. But then another part of me is worried that if I do help him, he'll latch on to me like a leech and keep asking for more favors. Plus, if I can figure out where they are, he could too if he'd just use his head and stop crying like a baby. He sent me another sob story text, saying I had to help him or he'd hit rock bottom. I can't handle this drama every few days, and I'm thinking about just giving in, but I'm not sure. Update 2, it's been a while since I last filled you in, and now there's even more drama. I ended up telling him what I found, and he thanked me but then started asking for more favors. I told him that's where I draw the line and I won't be dealing with any more of his pleas or even his calls. He seemed offended, but he kept quiet and didn't argue. I thought that was the end of it since he hadn't called me after that. But 2 nights ago, my ex-Mill called me in the middle of the night. She was freaking out, saying they were in legal trouble and needed my help with something. I'm a lawyer. She told me that Liam's new wife, Samantha, had actually eloped with him, and her parents are now threatening to file a case for abduction against Liam. I jumped out of bed like I'd been zapped. Liam had run off with a 21-year-old, which means that even though she's of age, it's still emotional manipulation. It made me feel sick and disgusted. I couldn't believe I had been married to such a predatory guy. I told my Mill that if Samantha had shown up on her own, the accusations would be toast, and her parents couldn't do squat. That's when my ex-Mill started bawling, saying that Samantha is now going along with what her folks are claiming. She's also saying that he was messing with her when she was underage and groomed her, so she won't be standing up for Liam. This totally blew my mind. I did the math and figured out that's why he was so fiercely defending his cheating sister. It was because he was cheating on me too and grooming a minor. I told my ex-Mill that all of them should rot in the afterlife for messing with a young girl's life and feelings. She begged me to represent Liam and said they were all sorry, but I told her I'd gladly fight against him if it came to that, but never for him. I also told her she had some nerve, coming to me knowing full well that her precious son cheated on me with a minor, used my resources to rebuild his life, and is now facing the music for his actions. She cursed me out a bit and hung up. I've been losing sleep over this ever since. I can't believe he turned out to be a predator. There were no signs of this, or maybe there were some that I missed. But I feel like puking to the ends of the earth because I was connected to someone as gross as my ex-husband. He deserves to rot in jail for the rest of his life, and then some. I feel bad for the poor girl, I can't even blame her. Even if this started when she was 17, that was 4 years ago, and Liam was 38 then. He was involved with a school-going kid, someone 21 years younger than him, and ended up marrying her. I don't know how this girl was Emily's friend, and if Emily was the one who introduced them, it's even more disturbing because that means the whole family is dangerous, and I got out just in time to save myself and my future from them. Update 3, I'm relieved to say I haven't heard anything directly from my ex's family. My ex-Mill has gone quiet and so has Liam, but Jonathan reached out to me, and I learned some stuff from him. Apparently, Emily and Samantha came back home after just a few weeks, and that's when Samantha started singing a different tune. She said she had been groomed and wanted to divorce Liam and leave. Her parents jumped in and said they were going to press charges against him. Jonathan told me their case was pretty weak, but it was enough to spook the family. So much so that Liam shelled out a good chunk of change to Samantha and her family to keep quiet and not press any charges. So he's totally screwed money-wise. Emily acts like she's clueless about all of this, claiming Samantha told her that Liam gave her the money. Everyone knows it's crap, but they only have each other to rely on. Word is that X-Mill and X-Phil are planning to downsize, and everyone's going to be crammed into a one-bedroom apartment until things get sorted out since Emily's stuck with a minimum wage job and Liam's bank account is totally drained. Jonathan told me Emily called him up begging for scraps, but he didn't give in to her pleas. He's got full custody of the kids, so she couldn't trick him into handing over cash that way. All in all, the whole family is codependent and seriously messed up, and I'm so glad I got out of their chaos when I did, even though I wish I'd never been involved with them at all. I had hoped Liam would do time for what he did to that poor girl. He's a groomer and a criminal, and I'm sure if he could pull off something like this once, he'll do it again. I wish there was a way to lock him up, but sharing a one-bedroom with his parents and sister is a kind of prison already, so he's in for a rough ride. I haven't heard from them at all, and I've got them blocked on every account and device I own, so I'm really hoping that's the end of it and I won't have to deal with anything more. I'm so tired of their drama, and I just need some peace in my life.